There we go. My mic was off the second, of course. I realized that when I pressed play. Hi, everybody. Doug here from 2 Plus Stuff. We are hanging out doing some hobby, and if you don't know, the bunch of news has just dropped for Age of Sigmar, hopefully speculation for 4th edition. Hopefully coming out here soon. I have a bunch of models to paint. I got everything I need for Adepticon 2024 done. So now I'm back to like painting just because I enjoy it. I mean, I enjoyed that too, but you know what I mean in terms of like having a deadline. And so on the table, I have some Raiders from Fallout Wasteland Warfare, as well as some Troggets from Warhammer Age of Sigmar, specifically Gloomspite Gits. I was really excited for my Flesh Eater Quartz, but my local stores have had trouble getting supplies in and their orders incorrectly, so you know, supply is kind of diminished when it comes to being able to get troops for them. Anyway, I got a whole bunch of Troggets to paint, so I thought, let's do that. I'm having a blast painting up the Gloomspite. They're a lot of fun. And I have a ton of stuff in other games that I want to talk about. So on my shared screen that we're going to go through as I'm kind of hobbying and chatting, I'm going to have a few different Games Workshop articles speculating about possibly 4th edition, just things I'd like to see. I'll leave that open for conversation in the chat, so please, just for the sake of keeping the stream interesting, drop your thoughts. And then there's a few things from other games that I wanted to talk about because there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. And it's easy for Games Workshop to suck all the air out of a room, but as excited as I am for the potential of a new step in AOS, 3rd edition has not been my jam, and so I'm looking at other games as well, as you probably have been able to tell on the channel, because it just got too technical for me. You know, I feel like Age of Sigmar 1.0 was about rules to put cool models on the table, and I feel like AOS 3.0 is good competitive rules that also let you use cool models, and those are different ethos when it comes to why you design games the way you do, what fair balance means, and engaging play. So with my, I don't know, I went into my preamble turned into just a ramble. Let's go to the downward cam. As you can see, I treated myself to a nice new background mat. Friends will know that I am a deep obsessee of the Mothman, and with the Fallout Magic the Gathering set that came out, I picked up the Mothman deck, just that one, and this bad boy, just to have something fun. Me and my buddy Rob are going to be doing what is it? I'm trying to think of the name of the program where you play Magic the Gathering but like through your webcam like this. There's a program that does it specifically, and so he had suggested that to me, so I'm excited, locked, loaded, ready to go. And let's see, I think that's it. Right in front of me, you see I have 2 units of Rockgut Troggets as well as a Boss Boy. And I'm going to have my painting mat on top of this so it won't look so busy here in a second. And then I have just a fistful of Raiders off cam. So let's do this. There we go. Now it's probably contrast-wise a bit easier to see what I'm actually doing than with all the words and junk. But some of these are actually headlines and news clippings from Point Pleasant papers. Some of them are a little bit, I think, tweaked, but it's cool. Let's see, we have Alfarius, hello. O-Stone, good morning. Flying Irish, perfect timing. Working on my Discuter to finish a full Harbinger chamber. Ooh, okay. And Ian, hey, love your videos. The background while I work. Have you ever thought about putting your stuff, lore vids, on Spotify? I have. I have to revisit the idea because it's a lot of, quite frankly, it's a lot of tedium for not a lot of payoff. Like, having things on Spotify doesn't help me do anything other than, I don't know. You know, I don't have advertising, so I don't want Spotify to do ads, and if you're not really watching what I'm doing, I don't know. There's a lot of pros and cons. No, to answer your point, no, I haven't really thought about it too much. But perhaps I will. I know for a while it made absolutely no sense when I was focusing on ad revenue as like a main income moneymaker, because it was just direct competition for no reason. People would just go watch it on Spotify because so would I. But I need to make money. And then the channel grew to a point where I didn't need that advertising income, and then with Kappa, income kind of diminished because of the way that they do stuff. There's a bunch of back-end things. Point is, right now, I don't advertise, or I don't use the advertising revenue function, so I'm actually, it wouldn't be competition now, which is different. It does change things. Let's see. What's up? Glad to catch you live. Oh, yes. Okay, apologies. Yes, let's get into our main topic. We've been lied to. You nerds have been had. Here we are. I'm gonna read this off while I'm kind of getting my paints together, and oh, it is just a video. Okay, I saw the video. Got a bell. We got rats. Green flashes of light. Tremors. All right, friends. While I'm getting my paints out, that's the video. Let's speculate wildly. No context, no words. It just is the word Sigmar lied. I meant like no dialogue. Let's start here. What did he lie about? A compelling answer that I have seen so far online is that he lied about Azir being safe, which is interesting. It could also be a situation kind of like we had during the Forbidden Power section, where they had like the vaults or whatever. Like, he lied by omission at that point of just nobody knew his schemes. So it could be a situation like that. The more we learn about Sigmar, the more of a tool he kind of sounds like. I mean, not evil in the way that like the Emperor and the Imperium, it has such a dark stain on, you know, what it means to be human, but like more just he kind of just seems like a tool. None of this was gonna work out. Okay, what do you think we've been lied to about? So yes, going in with our first question here, what do I think we've been lied to about? Yeah, I think it could be that Azir is safe. That's an interesting call. I mean, Skaven being in Azir have been there for a while. I could also see, I mean, just open it more broadly, that the cities are safe. You know, that would be kind of like, you have these big bastions of order, and like the lie is you're here suffering the things you suffer under the hands of Stormcast's oppression in some places, you know, like the Knights Excelsior are exceptionally harsh on their populace. And all of that was supposed to be worth it because you're protecting us, and if you can't protect us, that's the lie. I mean, that's, you're not holding up your end of the bargain, right? That could certainly be it. I think we can all agree, like, let's just get some easy basics out of the way. Skaven's being referenced. There's a giant doom bell. Sounds of scurrying rats. Even just that snapshot of the video vividly reminds me from the Warhammer End Times books. The Fall of Nuln, or The Bell Tolls for Nuln was the name of the section. And it was my favorite at the time, any kind of Warhammer media, because it was the first campaign book I ever bought, was End Times Thankful. But the idea of like, it gives you this kind of snapshot of a city, and then like a huge hunk of the inner city just falls into the ground, and then a Skaven parade with a giant bell comes up from the ground, like they've been burrowing underneath. Kind of gave me those vibes. So I think that's not really much in question. Between that and all the rumor engines and stuff, I think it's probably fair to say Skaven. So how do those two things lie? What would Skaven have to do with a Sigmar lie? And I think that's it, is just either his safety or the safety of people. Or, I mean, you know, it could also be a situation where Skaven are the villain, but that's not necessarily what that line was referring to. Like, maybe it's also at the same time as the Skaven are attacking, people are realizing these Stormcasts are freaking crazy and nobody wants to be around them. And so the lie is then, you're a protector? I love it. Ian, oh yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. The Emperor Protects. Yes. Oh, so Ian, I do have something on Spotify. If you look up my podcast, The Emperor Protects, if you're interested at all in Horus Heresy lore, me and my buddy Dan talk about that. I didn't even think to promote myself on my own channel. You know, it's whatever. Professional YouTuber. Subscribe. I'm up. Great content. Paul is going to slap some Hammerhand and become a demon prince. I hope so. You know, Ian, that's an interesting point you bring up Cole, because he was brought up in, well, the last of the campaign books that I read. Unfortunately, everybody, I'm a little bit behind. I think I mentioned that before. I'm actually like, what? I should have already been able to do everything about the Crone book coming out, but it's just not going to happen. There was just problems getting me the PDFs and that kind of stuff early, so I have to wait to buy it in store, and as mentioned, we're having supply problems. But to that end, though, like, they brought Cole back. That's awesome. I would love to see them do something with that. Let's see. It's gotta be either reforging or something to do with the coins from Sigmar. Interesting. Why do you bring up the coins? The coin, the Dawnbringer coin or whatever? Sigmar's actually been the old world Archeon this the whole time. I would love it. I would be very here for that. Okay, got some big ol' that's a stick. Both AOS, Cryptborn, Astria, Soulbright were looking into Cure's Dawnbringer stuff, so I wonder if they're pushing that hard. That's a good point. That's a good point. They were kind of towards the end there, leaning back on something's not right with Stormcast. Bunch of comments just came in at once. Give me a second here. The Stormcasts are here to help let the purge begin. Why are you fighting me? I'm just trying to help you. Let me kill you. Man, that's funny. Like a new dark Stormcast chamber, which is probably closer to chaos than order. Richard, morning king. Hey buddy. And I seriously hope G-Dubs is not trying to make Sigmar the next oh, okay, like making him like the Emperor. Okay, I understand. I haven't had to read that word. I've probably only heard it out loud. I don't necessarily think so, because one of the things I like in the discussion of how Sigmar is different than the Emperor is, I feel personally like Sigmar, relative to the setting, has a much more active presence, I feel, than the Emperor does. Like, for example, the last time he was shown to be a really crappy dude, right, was the Forbidden Power thing. He lied, he hijacked a gift from Teclis to make people smarter into literally making them dumber. The obscuring engines or whatever like that to hide the storm bolts. So like, he spit in the face of their gifts. There was a whole side story about like a dialogue between, I think it was Teclis and Tyrion, and they're like, this effing guy, and they just can't stand him. And at the time, it's less about the Sigmar being perfect and like everyone just has no choice but to follow him. And I feel like it's much more of a Greek god kind of play where it's like, no, he's highly fallible. He's just the biggest bully who's kind of keeping things together. Whereas I feel like the Emperor has obedience. And there's like political guile because he doesn't speak directly, so people can interpret him. Whereas Sigmar walks among people. Like there's books where he just like hangs out. Like, oh, cool. So I guess what I'm saying is that active presence makes him more of a character. When he hides something, he lies, he deceives. It feels like a character is doing it, as opposed to with 40k, I'm always like, well, actually, did the Emperor do that, or is it just the ecclesiarchy or whatever trying to? And 9 times out of 10, it's that. I don't know. I also feel like Sigmar doesn't ask of his people what the Emperor asks of mortals in 40k, like the subjugation, the terrible circumstance that they live in. I don't think Sigmar wants that in any way, shape, or form. Of course, the Emperor didn't either. But like, it's also just not what I see in the cities. It's like the things that he put in place to make his utopia happen are just falling apart. Stormcast don't get reforged right, and I don't know. I guess boots on the ground. I feel like it has more to do with Stormcast themselves than Sigmar as a leader, but that could just be my own biases. Emperor is more of a force in nature. Elect man, you gotta be more succinct. You're falling behind in the comments. Let's see. My theory about Sigmar Light actually comes from the reveal trailer of the Death Master. Soldiers talking about Ratman. Oh, so you think it's as simple as like Sigmar says there are no such thing as Skaven and Skaven appear? See, that I guess I just kind of assumed that people in Age of Sigmar knew about Skaven. They are mentioned a couple times, like in general. Like, I know that people in the old world, of course, knew about the Skaven as a faction, but I mean like the common soldier or whatever. That's an assumption, admittedly. It could be, well, that's what they have the line in the trailer. I don't know. He could have lied about a lot of things. I went through a whole bunch. Doesn't have to just be that they didn't exist. I always thought the Emperor was more analogous to Nagash than Sigmar. Ah, that's actually a very compelling thing. If we remove necromancy in terms of their personality types, I would probably say that's true. I mean, certainly in how the Emperor's vision has been co-opted by other forces, yes. Sigmar do be making bad decisions with the realms. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like a lot of his decisions are not malevolent in the same way that a lot of the Emperor's decisions came off as far as like, if you're a human, you're not allowed to have a religion. It's not that we frown upon it. It's that you're not allowed to have it. That's different. as opposed to Sigmar, which does allow the worship of Alariel and Nagash and Gorka Morka to an extent. Like, all cool. He's cool. Be whatever you want to be. I just need you to know that we're on the same side if Nurgle comes. Could not care less about the rest. I'm like, I'm here for that. Whereas Nagash, yes, Nagash is all about Nagash. Let's see. I have some other stuff I wanted to talk about here. So that was our big news from Games Workshop. Back to the shared screen here. That's all we have. Now, we know that they do say it's going to be revealed at Adepticon. I'm assuming that regardless of whether or not we get 4th edition, that's when we will get Skaven. Right, you know, I mean, just by based on that, I think it's not hard to see that there's going to be rats at some point. And let's move into a broader conversation here, okay? So there's a lot of rumors that 4th is going to be announced, and I would just like to talk about what we would like to see out of 4th. We've been talking a little bit about this on the 2+ Stuff Discord. I'm trying to get better about being in there more often, and it's been a really good conversation because I am of the persuasion that, like, I don't like what 3rd kind of became. I just wasn't having fun towards the end. And, you know, assuming this is the end. And so I am in a position where it's like, I kind of just want to go full Index Hammer. I want to restart. But I know that that is not an opinion that is shared by many people. I also find that in what we call Index Hammer, so that's when a new edition comes. It's always been for 40k so far, but they invalidate all of the rules from the current books that are out, even if you just got one. And the trade-off is that everybody is reset back to 0 with a new game system, so your art and stuff is still good, the lore is still accurate, but of course you're now without a book, and you're probably last in line if you were, say, a Flesh Eater Quartz person, which I am, even though I'm not paying one. So, but I disliked the over-minute tactical focus, I feel, personally, this is IMO, in my opinion, of 3rd edition, and so I would be very interested in a full reset. There's been talk about army composition kind of being like working in blocks or groups, and I don't really know anything about that, but if you do, I've heard some faint rumors on it. If you have them, go ahead, drop them. We'll talk about them. Again, this is all speculation. Please do not think anything you hear on this stream is like from the prophet's mouth, because I assure you it's not. That's why I put speculation in the title. Will there be new Stormcast models soon, you think? I mean, certainly if there's a new edition, poster boys always get new models in a new edition. That's just a GW. That's half the reason you make the box. That's why you play the game. It's to sell starter set models. Yes, I do. I do think there will be. I'm curious, though, as to what... I guess that's kind of a fun side question, right? The Ossiarch Bone Reapers get released, and we get, like, the Annihilation Chamber or whatever from the Stormcast. Not that. That's not what it's called. But they opened a new chamber to deal with the undead. Sacrosanct, that's what it is. What button do you press? What do you open? What tactical prowess do you unveil to fight Skaven? And I just imagine, like, Stormcast with a giant pickaxe. They're just like, Derek Zoolander when he goes in the mine tunnel for a day. I got the black lung, pa. was been doing a lot of the lore for Ulfenkarn, as you probably have seen on my channel, and there's a sub story there of like Radukar had to go fight a bunch of Skaven underneath the city at one point during the Age of Chaos because they tried burrowing up. So it was just like, hand me a shovel, and they just like him and a bunch of vampires went down while the Skaven were trying to dig up, and they just met in the middle and killed each other. I like that's just rad. Let's see. Vince knew this was coming. Oh, Vince knows all. Yeah. I asked him for the winning lotto numbers, and he said it would be too dangerous for all mankind for him to share his gifts. And I was like, what is the point of being your friend? Yes, Sigmar starts rat poison crossbow GoFundMe. Exactly right. He's gonna need it. Getting kind of a dark reddy brown. I'm going to use, they all have like these wrappings and stuff on their arms going around them. I'm going to use those as my ways to denote which unit they are. So like one will have red tabards, one will have purple probably. I just want something that has a little dash of color. I missed the initial discussion, but I'm here's hoping the cities it's hoping it's cities and not Stormcast. Interesting. I have to think about that, if that's how I would want it too. I think it'll be Stormcast just because that's how their business model goes, but that's a compelling idea. They certainly introduced enough models to them. The cities, I mean. You know, it's different if you have a starter set with like Carriage and Overlords, where there's like a very set number of sculpts. Like, cities has something for everybody. They make a good poster army. Someone should tell the people in the old world not to miss out on that opportunity. Hey, go to the old world development team. Hey guys, turns out people like the Empire. Do you guys know this? Weird. Okay, back to the chat here. Ruination was one of the 3 remaining sealed that I mean, it certainly sounds like it would take that to get rid of. That's the closest thing to the extermination chamber. How about that? If you had to call an exterminator to deal with a rat, I think if you saw a company that's called the Rat's Ruination, you'd be like, I want that guy. Right? That's the exterminator that I need. I need the Ruination guy. I'll build in some of the stone and the bone, but this will give it a nice kind of base for a dirty red color. So tell me, is there a little trailer for 4th? Nope, not really. Well, not necessarily a trailer for 4th. there's nothing really about anything. It just said Sigmar lied and then had some rat scurrying, and there's a lot of speculation that as we kind of stare down the barrel of what people generally think is going to be 4th edition, it's just kind of speculating about how the story could be set up in such a way to bring Skaven in a way that Sigmar lied about, presumably them, although not necessarily. Could have been lying about something else and then also got sucker punched at the Skaven at the same time. Like how there was a Necroquake that also revealed all the hidden vaults, kind of a deal. That's kind of, and I want to leave that option open because I don't know anything, but like I think it would be really cool if instead of one suffocating narrative in a single location, if they took the opportunity to like, okay, game's been out for a couple years now, we've, you know, cultivated lore in Gur, Akshi, Giran, a little bit in Shaman in the early days, but then they kind of backed off from that. Like, let's have something that's truly across the setting. And when I say across the setting, I don't mean anything crazy, like just how 40k has, you know, the two sides of the whatever Rift of Chaos. We could just have two separate story point locations about one outpost in Giran and one in Akshi, you know, that kind of stuff. Just, they don't need to be pulling the focus, but they could just be different perspectives on the same events. What's up, Robert? Stormcast with flamethrowers, rats, and poison bug sprays. That, I think that sounds like the best possible future. I'm not gonna lie. I think NMR 1998 wins. I want flamethrower Stormcasts. Be like, you know, Azir light cannons, and it's just like, what does it do? It's a rapid flamethrower lightning gun, like a Tesla cannon from Fallout 4. I don't know if you guys ever use that one. Or I think it's a Tesla rifle. Whatever, in 76 they have them where it's like, it's a rapid fire weapon, but it's just an arc of lightning that kind of works like a flamethrower. I don't know how else to say it. A little bag of rocks or something. Sweet. I think GW isn't going to focus on one realm as hard for 4th. After all, it seems GW is really trying to push new cities. Yeah, and I don't know, if I want to get into it more. So the reason I'm covering Wolf Incarnate at the moment is because Cubicle 7 has reached back out to me after like kind of being quiet for a couple of years. I thought they were not happy with the way I covered something before, but whatever. That's not true. It was just they got a new social media person and they reached out to me. Anyway, all that to say, after reading and catching up with what they've been working on, I'm like, there's just so much information about all these different places and all the different realms. I mean, if they said to me in a secret meeting, hey Doug, just so you know, we're going back to Akshi. Okay, we're going to bring the game back to its center, refocus on the things that made it really popular in first, and in first edition there was a big focus on Akshi, Giran, and Shaman. I would be all in for it because now, looking at the resources, they have so many more levers to pull that were filled in by Cubicle 7 of making engaging places like across Akshi. It's not a monolithic thing anymore. And it's so sad that we're leaving Gur just as Cubicle 7's Gur book is really starting to like get into people's hands. Because I feel the same way about that, where it's just like, this was always awesome. It's just you didn't take the time to fill it out, and then when a second company did, we're moving on. It's like, well, if we go back to some place that they already filled out, then it would be awesome. And what I mean by that is just simply like, when I say awesome stuff, I just mean like information about small little sub-villages that wouldn't be expanded upon in a GW book, ways of creating cool narrative obstacles by giving you a glimpse of what it's like to travel in a place, like that, just the story stuff that people love about Old World to make it feel like it's a place. Ninjarat's new models for Clan Eshin. It's given an actual serious threat to AOS. Hey Robin, this time. I don't know, yeah. Actually, that was something I was chatting with my buddy Brent from the channel Rerolling Ones, where they kind of stepped away from that. But he was saying to me, like, one of the things that he really loved about Skaven, he's a big Old World head. And he said, one of the things I loved about Skaven was that when I was being introduced to, you know, Warhammer Fantasy battles back in the day, you have all these things that look very, I don't want to say pedestrian, but like, you know, normal stuff, normal fantasy, knights, orcs, different interpretations of humanity, everything from the knightly realms of Bretonnia to the Empire, which is its own different beast. A lot of different expressions of traditional fantasy stuff, and then the Skaven were just this wild outlier that were bolted on, and it's like they fit in the world, but they are a wholly unique entity within it. And he said, I want that back. I want to feel like the Skaven are not just another faction. And I said, I first of all love that synopsis, that their kind of like alien nature needs to be at the forefront. And hopefully they do. I feel like they do a good job of that with the Sylvaneth book. Like, you can understand that Sylvaneth are a part of Order from a lot of different places, but it's different when you read the Sylvaneth battle tome and it's like, actually, we kind of hate everybody. It's just some of us are more willing to take on group projects than others. Which is like, oh, that's how I feel too. That's how I was in school, for sure. Just kind of didn't like anybody, and then if you made me do something, sure, whatever. So I would love for them to feel more alien. We do get the sense that the other Chaos factions just don't like them, but that's different than feeling like a unique type of fantasy, you know, aesthetic. Are we gonna get a follow-up to Karazai and Kragnos, or is that just gonna fade to black? Yeah, I don't know, man. I thought about that too, where fade to black is perfect. Whatever happened? Nobody knows. Well, I want to know. Nobody else might care, but I want to know. They tag him back? GOB gonna make this more interesting side of Stormcast. You know what's interesting, and I want to address that. That's a well said thing. I disagree. I think that the problem is that they have shown off the interesting side of Stormcasts, but they keep backing away from it. Like, I made videos a couple years ago that were like, okay, so we're starting to see flaws in what it means to be a Stormcast. This could be very compelling. I don't need them to be dystopian hell machine automatons of lightning, like people who are afraid that it's becoming more you know, 40k-ish every day. Like, I get that. I understand. At the same time, like, all the pieces are there that they've touched on of, like, something's not right. This isn't actually going to work long term, and that can be explored as a theme for disharmony, how the factions don't work well together. You know, it can set up stories, but they just never set up the story with it. It's just kind of a plot thread. It's like, well, okay, I don't care if sometimes a couple of them kind of go a little haywire and then nobody cares. Like, we need, if you give us consequences, we can build story off consequences. But they always seem to just kind of throw it out there and then just kind of walk away. Yeah, so some of them just kind of go crazy sometimes and kill a bunch of people, and you're like, shouldn't someone be looking into that? Hoax, and then just walk away. You're like, okay. We've been talking about this thread for Stormcast in 2nd edition and it didn't go all the way. Exactly, yeah. So I don't disagree with your point of, like, is this when they finally make Stormcast interesting? I'm just simply saying that the Makins have been there for a while. They just never seem to want to, you know, all for no play, if you will. Oh no, something was still wet, now it drug purple everywhere. That's okay, that's my fault. Foolish fool. What if an entire chamber goes senile or crazy? Yeah, I think an interesting thing could be, what if there was a chamber of Stormcast that exists kind of like the, oh, what are they called in Blood Angels? Where Death Company, where like they're broken and so they still want to be given like a warrior's death, and so they just kind of put them in suicidal conditions and hope that the problem resolves itself, but in the meantime you get some of the most cool badass units ever. I think I could definitely see something like a ruination chamber descriptor kind of fitting that. Like, these people, they're already ruined. They are broken. Let them serve or something like that. Although that doesn't satisfy me in terms of Ionis just taking Stormcast here. Like, if he was assembling, I presume, a ruination chamber, you're right. Those are poor souls that come to you. You don't just go pluck them. And wouldn't it be so cool if Vandus ended up there? Like, he became the captain of the Ruination Chamber just because he went insane, and boom. Now you've got new, I don't know, Mephiston or something. I don't know terribly much about the Dark Angels lore, unfortunately, but you know, they have characters that lean into the Death Company thing. Have you seen the pics of my Krakens yet, Doug? I don't think I have. I think the main problem with GW storytelling is they set so much stuff up that if they pursued it to its natural conclusion, it would just lead to another end times. You know, I have no problem with it always being like, you know, 2 seconds to midnight is the expression I hear a lot of. Like, I don't mind if there's always something that if you brought it to its conclusion, it's the end of the world, because that's how every battle tome is written, right? Like, every battle tome, if this army just had a chance, nobody else would be able to stand in their way. But if everybody's that way, then nobody's that way, kind of a thing. I feel like the issue is that they don't have enough time in a given setting or with a given, theme that we're talking about. Like, so in second, the idea of Stormcast kind of breaking down was a big talking point in a lot of the books. That they struggle internally with what that means, and people they protect are struggling with what that means. And it's not that needed to be followed into its, zillionth degree, but just give us stories of people struggling with that. And I feel like that's always been the issue, is just nobody seems to really be struggling with the reality that you're describing, and it sounds horrific. And there are good books. There's wonderful, like, Horus Heresy books. I think Aaron Dembski-Bowden is an incredibly talented author who can take some of these absolutely absurd, combat situations, but then layer them in between meaningful discussion. What does it mean when you've already lived 100 lives? That's something a Space Marine doesn't have to deal with in the same way. Yeah, they can be old enough to have lived 100 lives, but they hadn't died, been remade for the purpose of dying 100 times, or 99 times at least. So it can, there's like worldview discussions in there. It can be really interesting, but the problem is that by the time, this is my speculation of what the problem is. Let me just make that clear. These authors have a chance to really delve into what you just said means. We're already on to the next thing. And I kind of just, most of the time, just want to say, well, hold up here. Like, for example, in Gur, if they just last minute said, actually, we're going to stay in Gur for another year, I wouldn't be upset, because now there's stuff to talk about in Gur thanks to Cubicle 7, right? Because it would slow the conversation to where we could actually talk about the stuff that they have already introduced. Again, totally personal opinion. It's just I see the potential in the campaign books that they've released before. I don't feel like this particular Dawnbringer's campaign is prompting as many of those fun questions and debates as some of the other ones did, but I'm having fun with it. But even that being said, of like, it's all moving so fast that there's no way to just stop and ask questions about what does this mean? Like when you say X. Think we'll ever get Chaos Corrupted Stormcast? No, I think the closest we'll get is Damaged Goods good guy. Death Company style. That's personal opinion. I don't think they want to cross the streams too much. Although, I was going to say they could have Chaos Space Marines, right? Of course. But I feel like Slaves to Darkness kind of fill that role. Or at least they have in AOS up until this point. So it would be different if they changed it, for sure. Belly accidentally drug the perp ball around from his loincloth. Let's see. Two examples of what you're talking about are when Slaanesh's twins were born and Gordrak invading the 8 points. Two huge setting-altering events that didn't get mentioned and never... Yeah, exactly. Yep. Oh, I forgot about Gordrak. Yes. Oh man, I forgot about that. Gordrak got a hold of a giant skull of a god beast and was beating on the door of 8 points. Good call out. Everyone's talking about the ruinization chamber, and he has the logistics? Logister chamber, yes. Man, yeah, but that's what we need. Weaponized accountants. Okay, so while we're digesting ideas about the fate of the mortal realms, I have a few other game things I'm excited to talk about, and then we'll come back to this as we always pick up new folks as the conversation bounces around and the stream goes on. The next thing I wanted to talk about, because that was the big news from GW. Something's happening at Adepticon, it looks like. Is that the right one? So that's exciting. The next thing I wanted to talk about is actually out of the company Modifius. I made a declaration on another stream here that at some point, if somebody wants me to play their game, all they have to do is have the Mothman in it. And GW got beat real hard because they haven't even tried to do a Mothman thing. Here we are with Modifius. They get the Fallout game. If you don't know, I'm a big fan of the Fallout 76 online survival game. I think the co-op missions are a lot of fun, and I just generally have a good time. They're taking units and stuff from that game and putting it into Wasteland Warfare and their new game Fallout Factions, which I'll talk about here in a second. But essentially, yeah, they're introducing the Mothman cult. So we have here what I assume are going to be the bosses, right? The clergy. And then we'll move on here. This is going to be the rank and file, probably what you'll play a lot of in Wasteland Warfare, where it's a lot more of the base, you know, kind of bland troops or whatever. Factions we'll talk about. I actually have a demo and everything set up with them at Adepticon this year, and I'm very excited to try that out because it seems right up my alley. But essentially, I'm obsessed with the Mothman. If you haven't seen by the all of that stuff, here's the actual Mothman based on the 76 artwork. I should say gameplay. I don't know what do you call it. 3D model. There we go. Nailed it. And I could not be more excited to get my hands on some models because, like I said, right next to me I have a whole bunch of raiders. Oh, they also have the Wendigo, yes, and the Flatwoods monster, which is in the same region. So, very excited. I could never really understand what Fallout Warfare was about. Is it like faction versus faction skirmish game like Warcry? Is it a co-op versus environment game with base building mechanics? Lord of all ducks, it is all of those things. So, I'm going to just take a break from Sigmar to clear my brain a bit. We'll talk about Fallout, Wasteland Warfare, and factions. So, Wasteland Warfare, the way that I describe it to people is that instead of a typical skirmish game like you think of when you think Warcry, where it's, you know, PvP and you sit down and you just knock out a game, it is an analog video game. Okay, and that's always how I describe it because it just makes the most sense. You set up the battlefield like should be back up. The game can be as simple as player versus player with some very simple rules. I played that at my local game store a couple weeks ago. Had an absolute blast, where it's just gangs running and shooting. He brought Meyer Lurks, and I brought my raiders. Got smoked. Had a wonderful time. Much like I would say other skirmish games, Necromunda I think being a great example, is that you can make the game whatever you want it to be by adding or subtracting rules. And they have an entire library of additional rules so that you can customize your analog video game experience settings. By that I mean, at its core, when you buy the base set, it's just survivors, so regular dudes versus super mutants shooting each other, and that's all the game has to be. You could also introduce mechanics for, like you said, building up your own little survivor civilization, and then part of the aftermath sequence of every game is figuring out what junk you collect and loot so that you can go back and build your base. Again, bringing in the analog parts of the base building aspects of the video game. I think in general it's a game with an identity crisis because it's trying to be everything and ends up being not any one thing. Like, it doesn't have a competitive scene because it's not a competitive game. It's meant to be an exploratory dungeon diving analog video game. I don't know any other way to say it. That's my only go-to descriptor. And so Fallout Factions as a counterpoint is a little bit different. They basically looked at how bloated Wasteland Warfare, this is all my conjecture, they looked at how bloated Wasteland Warfare got and were like, people are just having trouble with this game from an accessibility standpoint, and so Factions is the stripped down, much closer to Warcry, player versus player, less frills, less minutia of bookkeeping, which is a big thing, and is kind of looking to fill that gap. Does that answer the question? Let's see. Jack, I pre-ordered Factions, but I'm on the fence as to if that was a mistake because they don't care about Nuka World. You know, I get that. The thing that has my interest is the minute it's not in Nuka World. Like, I'm fine with them saying we're introducing a new game, and to kind of dial in the rules, we're going to have it be set in a specific place and kind of lock it. I mean, that's fine. Lock it in, but then I expect their next destination to be quite epic. Is it worth getting into, or does it become too shallow unless you make it your main thing? Oh, Wasteland Warfare? That's a toughie, and that's actually a very good question. That's probably the right way to ask it. You will have an immense more amount of value out of it if it's your main thing. Straight up. If you like Fallout, like, it has everything. So if you're someone who has a PvE system, a player versus... Oh, they have a very deep AI system, but then in addition to that, there's also an environmental system that generates enemies that are hostile to both you and the AI. So you have this solo / PvE, even though those two things are actually different mechanically speaking. Point being, the options for everything is there. Like, I think Factions is what they want so that people can casually play. Does that make sense? Like, I think that question you asked is so good that they pretty much asked that at Modiphius headquarters and realized it's hard to become someone's main game, so we need to have another outlet for these models and this intellectual property that isn't so cannonball-esque, right? You have to jump all in at once. Autofocus doesn't work with me. Yeah, it happens. Have you ever considered covering or ever played Battletech? I have never played it, and I will level with you. A lot of the Battletech players I hear talking are just very dismissive of one another, and it just didn't seem very inviting, so I've never had the impetus to learn how to play the game. So I had that experience of listening to two people play Battletech next to me as I was playing AOS a while back. And, you know, you can always have crappy or good players. of any game, it seemed like there was maybe a disconnect between a veteran of the older style of Battletech, which I know even less about, and someone who was kind of playing the more recent iteration or whatever. That there was like a rules discrepancy, or one person was being rules lawyery about something. I don't know how it all worked out, but they were not having a good time, and so I never ask questions. Normally, if I'm at a game store and I see people playing something else, even if it's a game that I don't have any interest in, I'll still ask them about it, because, you know, it's cool to feel like you're in your safe place. So if I see people playing like Malifaux, like, hey, I don't play that. Don't really have any intention of buying a starter set. Tell me about it. What do you like about it? As long as it won't disturb them. And that was one where I just kept to myself. I don't know if both of these players like being around each other, but I know that I don't like being around that table, so I'm gonna leave. Let's see. The Rockgut Troggets mono build, do they have options? You know what? I actually did not build these. I got these built from a friend when I said I was playing Gits, and I don't have any that are on sprue at the moment, so I could not tell you, to be honest. I've never actually built these models. Yes, that kit has a ton of options for poses, faces, and ears. Thank you so much, Electman. I think Sigmar lied to you, is referring to Stormcast being immortal, but we know that Stormcast lose their memory and or skills every reforging and It's true, but if that was it, so okay, I have no way to rebut what you're saying. Could totally be true. Again, we're in wild speculation land and having a great time. Thanks for contributing, everybody, by the way. My thing when I hear that is that, like, the Stormcast being defunct was already a major reveal for us. So then going, like, in AOS 2, so now going into AOS 4 and having it be, like, a secret about how he lied to us, it just kind of, it feels too far out. Like, not too far out, too far removed from when we learned it for it to be compelling. Even though it is happening. Like, I agree with you, you're correct. I'm just not sure that that's what it's referring to, because I think you would have heard about it before, right? If we had the thing where Stormcasts are breaking and then the next season was, they lied, the Stormcasts are going insane, I'd be like all on board, but we've had a few iterations since then. It would be, how about that? If I think all the makings of the story you just described are there and would be cool, I would just be very perplexed at the sudden turn in direction. That's all. But, I mean, hey, you know, if the main story arc is just that the mortals are tired of being led by Stormcast, I mean, that's a compelling enough argument to me. Right? Like, get him out of there. Here's the thing about batch painting, it's when you find all the things you missed from the last color. And then it just becomes a matter of will to see if you don't cry. Azir is without chaos. Yes, correct. That's our understanding at the moment. And so yes, a lot of the speculation is the lie that Azir is safe. Or rather, not that Azir is safe, but that there are safe places in general. Like you know what I mean? Sigmar asks you to sacrifice all these things in order to create a place of safety, but if that place then is not safe, then those sacrifices feel like they were in vain. I'm open to that. I think that'd be pretty cool. Okay, let's see what we have to actually paint on these bad boys left. Got some rocks here. Build those in. He's done. He needs ropes. He as well. Good. Apologies, I'm just making sure I caught all of these steps on my various passing bys with paint. They have like a lot of these little bone things just kind of like stuck inside of their cupboards, and so it's a lot of little things to easily miss, especially if you're patch painting. I wish I could subscribe to this Azir isn't safe theory, but what the trailer showed lightning striking downward tells me that Stormcast are coming to that place from Azir. I think that's a fantastically compelling argument. Skaven have been under Azir the whole time. Yes. Watch, they have their own Skaven accounting department like we were talking about before. They're just like stealing all the ways that the Stormcast do logistics and math. Let's see, what other big news do we have going on? Oh, I do have some more stuff I want to talk about. So, in addition to Modifius, I also wanted to talk about this game. Now, I have mentioned Blood and Plunder on the channel before. I did a video about it like 2 years ago now. And I have had the hardest time finding people to play against. That is until interest was massively buoyed, pun intended, by the announcement of Port Royal. Port Royal, if you haven't seen the Beasts of War article about their kind of synopsis of it, I love it. Think Pirates of the Caribbean meets Mordheim. So you have a skirmish campaign variant that is very, at its core, very light, meaning there's just not a lot to learn. It's very accessible for new people. And it's just, you just use historical models. You could use whatever you want, really. I mean, I'm probably going to make a fan-made thing that introduces Cthulhu monsters, but that's just my opinion. It's not of the prerogative of Firelock Games. Anyway, I'm going to be doing some play testing for this over at Adepticon, and I invite anyone who wants to learn more. The Firelock table, guys who make this game in Blood and Plunder, it was the most pop and excited table of the con last year, in my opinion. Probably second only to Monument Hobbies, because people just wanted to come up and talk to him about the great commercials. So I would highly recommend everybody check it out. I've actually joined the playtest team for this, and I have been having an immense amount of fun. I do plan on covering it here on the channel because it is so accessible. The way that they handle campaign play and army building is really unique. Can't talk about it more than that, except to say that it is coming in the spring, and because it plays on a 2x2, which is my favorite game board size, bar none. Again, I'm not hard. Mothman, 2x2. Because of all of that, I'm very excited to cover the game, and I hope that you guys will pay attention to it as well, because it's easy to look at this and be like, oh, it's not fantasy, I don't care. But the thing is that it's also inherently sort of models agnostic, even though they make a range of models. So, you know, your Empire models with their level of tech in this rule set work perfectly, and it actually makes sense. Like, I've been demoing my playtest rules with the boats and stuff that I made, and then mixing in some other things. Cannot tell you how much fun it is. Anyway, so I wanted to throw that on your radar. Let's see. I hope the new Skaven aesthetic won't be too different from their old one. I can't fathom they're going to change that. If anything, I mean, they'll get a Primaris equivalent, which is just looking at all the things that made Space Marines good and then being like, more, which is very Skaven-y. Not size-wise, I'm not talking about a rescale or anything like that with Primaris thing. I just meant, like, in terms of their design vision, it's probably not going to be very different from what Skaven are now. Why mess with a good thing that makes money? So anyway. That looks interesting. Got the Blood and Plunder Kickstarter back when it was mostly ships. Oh yeah, I have 2 barks. They're smallest of their ships besides canoes built. And I created a board. Let's see if I have a good picture of it here. Go down here, pop open. Made pictures and then I posted them, and I forgot where I put the files. Here we go. So it's a little hard to see just because of the... But here's my demo board that I've been using. 2x2. These risers are for the game Carnivale, but they work for anything, of course. I have a water mat on the table. This is a burnt building right here on the left center. Top left is a watchtower. And yeah, it's just a blue mat. The risers, a bunch of scatter terrain, and then these docks or whatever. I have a tutorial that I'm editing right now on how to make these, and it's literally just coffee stirs that I snapped in a bajillion places, Mod Podged and dry brushed. So it pans out pretty well. Point is, for a game that could very much be models agnostic, it's baller. How about that? And I think the only other thing I had to talk about was the fact that we're going to talk about Fallout factions here, because I do have my Fallout minis on the table, even though I haven't touched them. And the idea being, oh, thank you, looks awesome. Yeah, I'll throw it up here in case anybody else wants to take a look. That's my gaming table. I posted that on our Discord, and someone was like, I don't care what you made it for, I want to play Warcry on it. It's like, oh, thank you. It does actually look like it would be fun for Warcry. I'll throw that up there for just a hot second so people can take a look. But yeah, it was an immense amount of fun to put together. My wife is a photographer, and she will be helping me take some really good pics. I think I'm going to practice again. I did a battle report for my Warcry stuff with my Corvus Cabal like a long time ago, and I never tried again, but I definitely want to, because I think I could do it much better and efficiently. That was the problem, is that it took so much time to do that, that doing that and pretty much anything else together at the same time was just not possible, just in terms of editing. But since then, I've upgraded my computer so it can process things without crashing much faster. So, you know. You have a playlist with the music that you use. Give me 1 second here. For my background that you're listening to right now, we are listening to Lo-Fi Covers on Spotify. Here, I'll go down to the downward cam. Let me get you this link. I'll throw it in the queue. Also, Doug, you mentioned mortal revolt against Stormcast rule, but it's primarily the conclaves that are in control of major decisions. Stormcast might have a single seat, but that's not controlling. No, but if your day-to-day life is like, go read Dominion and listen about how the Knights Excelsior rule over the citizens of Excelsius. I understand that the conclave makes the decisions, but if the common populace is scared of the police that they see every single day, then like, it's just a lot. That's more what I was talking about, is when I read that book, the civil unrest and the fear that people feel from their defenders is what I was talking about. Hammers of Sigmar, first forged, made it pretty major to point, not Stormcast place. The Elect Man, you're talking about one chamber though, because like I said, Knights Excelsior have their fists solidly up your rear. So but like anything that they do lore-wise, let me just point this out. Doesn't matter actually what Games Workshop does lore-wise, because the operating principle of Games Workshop is that anything is possible when it comes to Age of Sigmar. So even if they come out with a Chaos Chamber, and they say that every storm host has a Chaos Stormcast Eternal chamber in it, that never has to be reflected in your lore, your tabletop, particular cities, anything like that. Like, there's always going to be exceptions. So talking in, absolute terms, it's kind of rough. It's kind of difficult on purpose, I think. Jade here. And I'm just going to do a light dry brush on their backs to kind of make some of the color pop. Oh, you're very welcome. More like Knights Excelsior, ayo. And that's to say, like, not that they can't go that direction, of course. Like we talked about, this is all, we're speculating here. It's not that they can't go any of those directions you guys mentioned. It's more just, they write themselves into these weird corners where you're like, okay, so is Crag... I mean, my first question is, okay, so is Kragnos still a problem? Like, we have a new god. And it makes sense that Marathi was not constantly in the story, because ultimately Marathi just wanted her own little slice of the world and to, like, rule over it, which she got in Harkuron. So it's like, okay, I didn't feel this pressing urgency to know more about how that story resolved, right? She got what she wanted, her expected outcome. And I'm like, yes, queen. But when it comes to this, it's like, okay, but Kragnos wants to kill everybody. Like, yeah, there's no negotiating with that. He's mad about his home, and everyone reminds him of his home. He just tries to kill everybody all the time. And it's like, well, I feel like maybe we should deal with that. Maybe things will be cool. I am For Kragnos, I'm the For Kragnos enjoyers. You got shafted in the lore. Let me ask you this. This is a question for the group. Let's assume for a moment that fourth edition is on its way. Okay, we're going to hear about it at Adepticon, and there will be much both rejoicing and weeping and gnashing of teeth, as there is with every new edition launch. Let me ask you, how would you feel if they went full Index Hammer? I asked this in my Discord, and I will make it very clear again, this doesn't come from any prior knowledge. I don't know. My name is Doug, and I don't know things. That's basically my wife and I joke about. But I'm curious, because to me, do I want Index Hammer? A little, but mainly because Index Hammer means that they've changed the game so fundamentally that what they've already done just simply doesn't function. And it's like, I don't necessarily want battle tomes to go out of use, but I definitely want that. And I am someone who's willing to pay that price. But I understand if you're, one of many factions who just recently got a battle tome. I don't understand indexes. Can you explain real quick? Absolutely, Picat. So, Index Hammer, as I talked about, is kind of a nomenclature that comes from 40k. Every couple of years, they will make an edition change that is so sweeping that the codexes, the army books that players have, no longer function in the game. They don't work in that edition. You can still hold on to them and play a previous edition, but they just don't work for the current game. What that means on a practical level for you and I is, one, people get aggravated that their books are invalidated, but also it means that all players are now on a level playing field. There is no battle tome that's pulling a faction way too far ahead in the polls when it comes to balance, because it's kind of a smaller vacuum. And so when they do this in 40k, a lot of times, myself included, that's when you have a lot of people coming back to the game because the game feels so much more manageable. There's not a bunch of supplements and you're not trying to search everywhere for your army rules. You have one book. It's called an index. In 40k, they'll have like Index Astartes, which is all the Space Marine stuff in one book. Index Chaos, which is all Chaos factions in a book. And so the amount of resources you have to source and learn shrinks dramatically when one of these bigger edition launches happens. And it makes the game so much more inviting. And then the rest of the edition is spent adding junk onto the game and watching players kind of just go away in piecemeal as it becomes too complicated. This is the Games Workshop rhythm that we all dance to. But yes, it just means that there's going to be a reset that's so fundamentally big that the books that are currently, you have the lore and the art is still, that's where the value is. But from a rules resource standpoint, things have kind of moved beyond the codex as you have it. Be fine with it. In my opinion, the game is kind of a bit stale and could use a bit of a refresh. Agreed. I think a lot of people are in that same boat. It would be okay if they don't try to shaft us by selling index cards that are immediately superseded. Pigcat, would it solve the new Battletome best Battletome issue? Solve is a strong word. More like resets. It resets the issue. because whenever they do this in 40k, they launch the edition, and immediately the first Battletomes, or in their cases codexes they call them, that come out are Space Marines and whatever was in the starter set for that edition with Space Marines. And because those are the only two codexes, they are by very definition the most powerful, and so the whole machine starts all over again. And if you're thinking to yourself, why do people play this game? It has nothing to do with the game. The game's fantastic. Well, I don't really like third, but most AOS editions have been fantastic. It's more Games Workshop's business model than anything else. Just saw that there was some bits here of the stone that needed to be darkened and grossed out, so got some strong tone. I don't normally do army painter washes. This is really nice. I haven't used the strong tone. Let's see. I'm not too familiar with 40k, so this is helpful. No, that's fantastic. Yeah, and I don't want to... If anyone has questions, there's no dumb questions here when it comes to edition changes for sure. Simply because I don't think people realize that if you're not like already in the Games Workshop sphere, other games don't do this, right? Like Ticket to Ride doesn't be like, F everything that you have in your closet. It's all trash now, unless you want to play with people who play old editions of games. It's basically what Games Workshop does every 3 years. And so people who are not used to that are like, wait, what? I remember when I was introducing my buddy Rob back in Iowa City about this, it was just, he was like, oh man, so like that doesn't even have like a long shelf life. I'm like, no, and it's all arbitrary. They did it to themselves. In 10th right now, it's the opposite. I'm hearing people dread their new codex because in many times it's a downgrade. See, I could see that as a possible outcome, because when everything is simple and succinct and you have your very clear, like, this unit does X to provide X, Y value, and then when you get a codex and now you're trying to bring stratagems and you have to have those stratagems mean something, otherwise why did you buy the book? So now we have to lower the power of things, now knowing that they're going to be using these set stratagems, and this cycle just continues. It's a design issue, I don't envy anyone on the design team. This is why I don't Monday quarterback battle tomes and stuff, right? I mean, there are some glaring issues where it's like, okay guys, like this is pretty fundamental, like not closing off a clause. Vince is really good at catching those things, is like, here's the problem with this, it needs an FAQ immediately because you didn't put a when it ends clause, so this stacks to, infinity. Him and Tom are fantastic at those little things where it's like, yeah, if you thought about it for just a second, bro. Don't worry, you can still use your old codex if you want to play by yourself. Yes, exactly. Yes, I did my fake little barf sound. You play old hammer? You can play any edition of Warhammer you want, if you don't like having friends, I guess. There's a new Ossiarch Bone Reapers model on the Warhammer community page. Let's see. Battle suits. Oh, okay. So let's see here. This is our preview page. Thank you for pointing this out, Anatar. I'm not gonna play the video because it tends to blow up my speakers, but we have some pictures of nerds being nerds. Is that? No. That was someone I recognized here. Scrolling down. Things were showing off. Okay. Interesting. See, okay. My first thought when I scrolled to this point and looking at this thing is, when did they ever start saying teasers? I feel like this is gonna sound silly, but I feel like most of the things that they call previews are teasers to me, where it's just like a logo and then, spring 2026, and you're like, what? That's an opinion piece, but I'm curious as to what the distinction between reveals and teasers is in their minds. But looking on the rest of it here, give me 1 second. place called Scumberg, Illinois. Schaumburg. It's pronounced Schaumburg, but yes. I would absolutely live in Scumberg, Illinois. Welcome to Scumberg. You might not leave with all your organs, but you'll get some great travel memorabilia. We have the world's largest thumbtack and also an underground criminal organization to steal your organs. Okay, so 40k, honestly, don't care about. Warhammer Age of Sigmar, I'm going to put my speculation out there. Again, big asterisk there. I think they're going to reveal the next edition, which is going to have Saven in the starter set and probably be part of the marketing campaign for the next edition. So like it'll be a hybrid of Skaven, Stormcast, and the new edition. Kind of all wrapped into one. Warcry, I really want to get back into covering it here on the channel. My spark was renewed after I had a really rough game of AOS last week. And I just was like, I want to use my Gloomspite Gits models, but not in this. So I'm excited to see what they come out with. Hopefully, I don't know. I really love when they come out with new locations. I've been kind of itching for some more terrain. I didn't get the last few sets they did. At my local game store, there's a set that keeps taunting me every single time, and it's the Varanite Mine one, which I just think looks absolutely astounding. But the one, they already moved away from that, and moved away from it as a plot point too. Like there's still, we were talking about earlier about narrative plot threads that could set up for 4th and how Games Workshop kind of ignores stuff they've already laid down. Archaon discovering a way to break the locks of Azir was definitely a major plot point that was never touched on ever again. And there's no reason, narratively, why he hasn't already done that. That's why Marathi became a god. She saw Archaon doing this stuff and started the whole series of events where she became a god, but they never actually, in the end, permanently shut down Archaon's way of getting Varanite. They closed one mine. I was like, oh, that's not good. That's gonna come back, and it never did. Anyway, that's a side tangent, but you see what I mean. So Warcry, I don't know. Old World, I know but don't care. I'm just kidding. I have an inkling it has to do like because they're still rolling out like different supplements and stuff like that for that. I'm sure it's something like that, but I can't honestly. If I'm going to cover any kind of square-based game, it's definitely going to be Conquest. Still, I have my Conquest stuff across the shelf. My dinosaurs staring at me. I like them a lot. Don't see any reason to not use them. It just game-wise doesn't do much for me. Then there's Kill Team. I know very little about Kill Team, so I don't know their current state. Underworlds is kind of the same way. They just, I think, up for pre-order this week are some undead models and like an expansion for their pre-made decks, which I'm actually going to try one of those things out. Have any of you, just chatting here, sorry, I'm waiting for some paint to dry. Have any of you tried the new, like, I think they call them adversary decks or something, but it's like a pre-made competitive deck for Underworlds, and I like that idea quite a bit, actually, to the point where I kind of just want the online play version of Warhammer Underworlds to do the same thing. Like, you just get a bespoke deck, and then it becomes about player skill of making that deck work with your warband kind of a thing. We'll see. But I would love to know if you guys have actually tried those. They look great, and maybe that's what we'll be getting. And then there is, yeah, exciting teasers. So what brought us to this page in this article is actually here. That is an Ossiarch Bone Reaper good boy. And I'm going to go ahead and say that's probably has to do with the Underworlds reveals. There's only one Ossiarch warband right now. Underworlds is a perfect place to introduce individual models like this. I mean, when I see this model, to me, that's the no-brainer, right? All the rumors and all the discussion around Age of Sigmar has been around 4th edition and Skaven and new Stormcast, of course, as a result. Oh, I guess Warcry. It could be Warcry, like a Warcry warband. They have been putting those boxes back out. There was a time there where they kind of just merged, like, the Slaves to Darkness boxes design-wise with them, and that was kind of confusing for me. But yes, Skelligat. Rivals decks. Yes, that's what it's called. And I'm going to take just a little dry brush layer of Sybarite green. Just for the highest parts of their little spines. I think 40k could really use an Underworlds equivalent, not for the game, but just to include lots of weird whimsical stuff that doesn't fit in other 40k games. I would agree. I think they're definitely doing that with Kill Team, like having... Didn't they have like a Night Lords warband or something for them? Like it's a very specific thing. Where everyone was like, oh man, I'm so glad this exists. It's not for me, but it's for someone. Which, I mean, I feel like that's ultimately like the joy that the freedom and joy that those games give you is like, it doesn't have to be for anything. You can just be. You know, I'm just not realizing that Sybarite green is actually brighter than my other one, so I'm gonna hold off on that. It's not really adding a whole lot of color, it's kind of adding just more green tone, so. Anyway. Trogs are almost done. Let me throw some basing stuff on there so it can be drying. As I said, these came pre-built to me, so I have a big old tub of Vallejo mud, and I'm just going to apply mud all over the bases and then paint over it with the way that I've been doing my Gloomspite bases, which is basically wet blending different glowy cave colors until I achieve something that I think looks good. Oh, it's so dark. My thing with the old world is Tomb Kings are cool. Other than that, I don't care. Oh, yeah. Like, all you're attracted to is the Tomb Kings. Hey. Well, first, I just didn't know anyone locally who was even remotely interested. For as many times as I've heard the story of how Games Workshop ruined everything by getting rid of fantasy battles, and I can't wait until they bring it back. I just haven't seen a lot of that turn into gameplay locally. Admittedly, maybe it's in their homes and garages rather than game stores, but, you know, if you were complaining in the game store, please come back and run a demo day or something. If you made it our problem, at least bring us your solution. How about that? Remember when they made board games full of weirdos? They should do that again. Board games full of weirdos. Oh, you just mean like just old games that just had models like Warhammer Quest and stuff like that? I was so bummed I never got anyone to play Cursed City with. You know, and honestly, even Silver Tower seemed pretty fun. I did play the mobile game version because it was just a great time for a little bit. Silver Tower game falls into that same kind of space for me in my brain where it's like they just tried too early. AOS wasn't grounded enough for you to try expanding into these cool little avenues because people didn't want to know about the cool little avenues at the time. They were still trying to understand the general setting. You know, like from a marketing perspective, I feel game-wise, it was a blast. Silver Tower's super cool. Section. Let's see. Old World is super perplexing. Pretty much fully on board with it, but I do hear strange things. Internal rivalry, sabotaging it, and stores not getting any stock. Hope it succeeds. The whole Kislev and Cathay thing. 2 factions that the game was first announced with. And then they might be gone. Oh, I haven't heard anything about that. Are they just like not being supported kind of gone, or? I think I said it before. My biggest problem with the Old World was just the marketing. I feel like they sold a game on hype without substance. People they wanted. If you wanted the models and you got it, don't feel bad. I just mean like I just didn't like the way it was marketed. It felt very vague, and it was very much like a. They kept leaving things open for letting people fill in what they wanted, and then not saying, actually, that won't be there. So there's just, you let anticipation and expectation sell the game for you, because at that point, any marketing you actually add is going to remove enthusiasm. Because the more you share, the more you speak, the more people realize it's not what they want. Not to say it's a bad game or that people didn't try hard on it. It was my issues are entirely with the marketing campaign side of it. That's more the corporate side. Rumors is that main GW doesn't want Old World to succeed since it is a specialist game, which is weird. Oh, I don't put much stock. They put a lot of money into that, a lot of time, a lot of just corporate resources. You know, your artist making art for that isn't making art for something else, kind of a deal, even though they get paid a salary. So I don't buy it. They don't want it to succeed. I think they do. I just don't know if they. I mean, part of it is I think they just wanted to put something there so that they could reaffirm that they own the intellectual property after they stopped talking about Old World, and then what is it? Fantasy Battles, the video game or whatever. Total War got so big. They're like, actually, we do want this. We do claim it. We got it. First Seas, we own it. It's us. It's ours. We got it. Which is kind of why I said that in the beginning, because I was like, okay, so they announced it with nothing but a logo, and that's all we saw for the first 2 years of its existence was just this stupid logo. It looks great, by the way. I was just like, in terms of trying to sell me something and get me excited to pre-order, that wasn't the way to do it. Let's see. But the factions are not coming anytime soon. That's crummy. Could mean they've abandoned them. Could mean they've come once everything is out. Could mean they will come out next week as far as we know. Interesting. That does That does shed a little bit of interest. Intrigue. You know, and then, but then there's a situation like that. Okay, let's just, this is the Speculate Wildly stream. We'll lean into it. Instead of it being this corporate evil like Games Workshop doesn't care, it could also be that there's a poor struggling artist at Games Workshop who just keeps getting more crap thrown on their desk because Games Workshop realizes that other things are more profitable. So it's not that we don't care or we don't want fantasy battles to fail. But if you have someone, my wife was in this position in her corporate job, which is a boss walks up to your desk and says, this is your top priority. And then they say that same sentence 8 times. And at the end of it, you're like, so what's the top priority? Everything. Okay, well, Old World, whether they want it to succeed or not, will always be second to AOS and 40k just on sheer money-making might alone. So if you have limited resources to produce things and you keep redirecting somebody or pulling them off tasks, it just doesn't get done. Until there's a shareholder meeting and then everyone's like, well, how come nothing ever actually got made? Why aren't we making money? We promised a bunch of stuff. We didn't actually make or design these things. Alright, so trogs are like 90%. I'll need to do the bases, of course, and then pick out some details and highlights on their clothing once the wash is dried. And then maybe do a little bit more detail on the face. I think I want to do one more little thing of highlights to really pick out some of the fun features there. Yeah. I think it's true to an extent, but in an absolute degree. Absolutely. I mean, like, are based on their Total War Warhammer designs. GW is happy to inject Total War into AOS. Yeah, I don't care about that. I mean, I don't have any disagreement with that. I just meant that they wanted to show up and have some physical product tying them to Warhammer, as is known by Altdorf and Old World terminology. They can bleed that into AOS. They own that. It's fine. It's also just fits in line with claiming the intellectual property of the designs. I also don't think that they care very much about keeping AOS and fantasy battles separate. If you read the opening book of the core book of Warhammer Fantasy Battles, it reads like a prologue to Age of Sigmar. The old ones came here, set this whole system up, and were like, things are good! And then left to go siphon magic away from ethereal realms of pure arcane energy, which is the mortal realms. So, you know, there's that. I guess I should probably piss some people off by doing an Old World lore series, but telling it as if it's pre-war knowledge of Age of Sigmar universe, because it's basically how it's written. If you didn't know that, yes, that is the truth. If you go read the Old World book, that first chapter when it's like the old ones setting up the world, it sounds like AOS lore. Anyone who doesn't say so, I'm just like, I'm looking at the Seraphon book. This has nothing to do with anything, but I'm really enjoying these lo-fi instrumental covers. Absolutely, yes, my wife and I love to just hang out and listen to these. Age of Sigmar at the beginning, yes. Yeah. That's what I should do, just, oh, yes, just like play it completely straight and have a whole web series that's just like the Age of Myth, or I don't know, the pre-Age of Myth or something like that, and it's just old world lore for Age of Sigmar, but I use all the Age of Sigmar keywords. Okay, I'm gonna share this. There is a comment on a video that I approved, even though they're berating me, which I mean, normally I just delete those because it's like, if you're gonna cuss at me, we're not having a reasonable conversation, so why even put it in a comment? Anyway, but they were berating me because it was a Tomerkin's Horde video, and I think it was the 5th one in that series, so they have already watched the entire series. The series where I say in no uncertain terms at least 3 times, I did not play the Old World, but somebody was kind enough to send me this book and I wanted to talk about it because I loved what I read. That's the premise of that entire series. It is the only Old World content that exists on my channel, in a dedicated way. And this comment just like railed into me for a paragraph about how I don't respect the old world lore, how I keep looking at it and then comparing it to Age of Sigmar, and then in all caps over and over again, this is not Age of Sigmar, this is not Age of Sigmar. And you know, I just responded with like, thanks for watching, because that's what I do, right? Thanks for the comment, really helping the engagement there, bud. But it was very funny to me. I was just sitting there watching someone, I guess, just mistake the fake world for the real one. I don't know, man. But yes, it was that same thing where I'm thinking about that person now, and if I were to do a lore series where it's that person's worst nightmare of me just being like, guys, let's talk about some Age of Sigmar lore. Our story begins in the majestic town of Altdorf. Emperor Karl Franz is in charge. Things are going swimmingly. I'm just trying to imagine a whole comment section full of that, guys. I'd actually like to watch those videos. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, Elect Man. I just meant that they just wanted their name on a piece of paper somewhere claiming ownership of that, and they were desperate to do it in any way that they could, which is why I think the old world, marketing-wise, was very half-baked. Why we had nothing but a logo for 2 years to stare at. Yeah, no, I know what you mean though. Like, yes, I did notice that too with the Croxagore designs, and they're beautiful. Like, there's so many designs I think they should lift from Total War. But yeah. Let's talk about Osieric Bone Reapers. There's this guy named Cetra. Exactly! Oh, yes, that would be amazing. They call him Tomb King Daddy Senbei. His name, of course, is Catacross. I would be murdered. The next convention I go to. Here he is. Yep, have to use like totally just default the original Tomb King. Eldest Bone Daddy. Isn't that what Vince calls him, I think? A series like that would be fun, but at least an April 1st video should be done. That's a solid point. That's coming up here soon, isn't it? Just do an Age of Sigmar, but lore, like lore but wrong kind of thing. Oh man, let's see. It was an epic series. Oh, thank you. I had a great time doing it. It was cool to learn. I liked those campaigns book, those old Forge World ones, because they gave you all the context you needed for the story. Like, I didn't know anything about Warhammer Fantasy Battles, but the campaign book took the time to explain the location and the factions and just at a very base level their motivations. So you could pick up and read it, and you don't need to know. Like, I was introduced to the Chaos Dwarves, Temerkin's Horde, how the Nurgle army works in that sense, where they were going, where they were, what they wanted, and I didn't know anything about those in the old world, and it just did a great job. I feel like a lot of the newer content they put out in terms of campaign stories require a building of knowledge that it's like, well, where do you start with this? part of that is the media age. I mean, like when artists like Alan Bly were working at Forge World, making those kinds of campaign books, the internet wasn't as ubiquitous as it was. Certainly not in a corporate sense to GW, because they hated the internet. Whereas I feel like now we flip to the point where they kind of lean heavily on content creators like myself, because their information is not as accessible. You need wikis. You need to be able to go back and find old material that's been out of print for a long time. I had people from Cubicle 7, a Black Library author, and the guys who make the card game come in and say, hey, we watched your videos because we couldn't figure out how to jump into this, which in hindsight makes me wish that I had slipped in just completely false statements into my videos to see if I could make something become lore. But that hasn't panned out yet. I'm starting to do it now. We'll see. We'll see the fruits of that labor at some point, hopefully. Every video I just slip in something completely false. I don't do that, but you know what I mean. Where it's like their storytelling approach is not accessible anymore. It requires an immense amount of research. You have to, like, you know, bust out your paintbrushes and hang out and listen to videos for 3 hours to be able to understand a lot of this, so I get it. But I have been going for 2 hours now. My voice is just about to give out on me, and my cat is begging me for food, so I'm gonna go hang out with them. Here. This is Finn. We're gonna go get some food. I'll see you guys later. You guys have yourselves a wonderful day, and I will catch you next time. We'll do some more painting and